Lesson 2, Part 1. In this part, you will receive exact instructions for performing the lesser banishing ritual of the Pentagram. Before going on in this lesson, go back and review Part 3 of Lesson 1. Be sure that you're totally familiar with all the ideas in that section before proceeding in this section. The lesser banishing ritual of the Pentagram preliminaries. Start by going to an area where you will do the ritual. If you have an altar as described in the later lesson, in the previous lesson, put it in the exact center of the area. To be totally complete, you may wish to take a ritual cleansing bath before the ritual. This type of bath is not intended to merely take the dirt off your skin, rather it is to cleanse the negativity and the cares of the day from the energetic spirit from within. First, take a shower to get the dirt off, then run the warm bath. Be sure to put in some bath salts or Epsom salts with some nicely scented oil or perfumes added, and just soak for a few minutes. Feel all the cares, worries, and negativity going into the water. Now pull the plug and let the water drain while you stay in the water. As the water slowly drains, you will feel all of the negative things which were troubling you go down with the water. After all the water is drained out of the tub, get out and dry yourself with a clean, fresh towel. Finally, put on your robe or special magical clothes, any one you prefer. If you have them, put the 4 tools which represent the magical elements on top of the altar, or table, or chair, or floor. Remember, have all of them present or use none of them. Put the major arcana cards on a pile on the top of the altar too. Bring a chair into your area so that you can sit. And you can see in the diagram below, you should be facing the east. If you have any candles, lit them. Turn out any electric lights you have burning. Of course, if it is daylight, you will want to pull the drapes or close the curtains, etc. Your goal should be to have the room lit only by candles. Also, light any incense you wish to burn at this time. Sit in the chair facing east and do the relaxation ritual. Now stand still facing east. Take the dagger, not the air dagger, in your right hand, or point with your finger as described in the last lesson. Now that you are in the presence of God, the ritual has begun. Part 1, the Kabbalistic cross. Step 1, visualize yourself getting larger and larger, taller and taller, until you tower above the room you are in. Continue this growing visualization until the city you live in is small beneath your feet. So the continent is tiny compared to your majestic body. Now even the earth is as small beneath your feet. However, no matter how small the earth is, it is still firm and solid beneath your feet, anchoring you to the ground. You will not float away. Next, visualize yourself growing so large that the planets of our solar system are like tiny toy rubber balls spinning near your feet. Soon, they are to see as even the Milky Way galaxy becomes a small dot of light at your feet. Now visualize a dot of light coming from somewhere far above your head. Know that this is only a tiny bit of the light from this source. If you saw the full brightness of this light, you would immediately be blinded and quite possibly go insane. This pulsating light just above your head is 9 inches in diameter, about the size of a dinner plate. It is brighter than 10,000 suns, but still only a tiny portion of this source of this divine spiritual white light. Point to the sphere above your head with a dagger or finger, and bring it down by pointing to your forehead just above and between the eyes. Next, visualize the brilliance filling your head with divine light. While pointing to your forehead, you vibrate the name Ta. Bold-faced syllable denotes emphasis. Step 2. Bring the point of the dagger or your finger firmly down your body until you are pointing towards the ground. Your hand with the blade should be covering your groin. As you do this visualization, the light in your head coming down along with the blade or finger down through your body and beyond your feet down to the eternity. Vibrate the name Malkut. Step 3. Now bring the blade up to your right shoulder. As you do this, visualize the beam of white light running down the center of your body from a beam from the heart area out to your right, past the blade at your right shoulder. See this beam of light extended to the end of the universe and beyond, and focus on the beam and vibrate the name Vigbura. Step 4. Move the point of the blade horizontally to your left shoulder. As you do, visualize the beam of white light now extending through the infinite space to your left. As you focus this beam of light, vibrate the name Vigdula. Step 5. Clasp your hands at your chest as if praying. If you are using a dagger, the point should be up, not pointing away from you, nor to the side or down. Visualize within your chest, at the point covered by your folded hands, a brilliant golden glow. Vibrate the name Leo, or vibrate, not the name, Leolam Amen. The meaning of this phrase, part of the Lesser Banishing Ritual, LBRP, is as follows. Ata meaning thine. In Hebrew, the visualization given above, along with the proper pointing of the dagger or finger, is for the purpose of indicating that you are linking your higher self with the divine. Malkut means kingdom, and according to the Kabbalah, refers to the earth. That is why you should be pointing down. Vigbura means and the power, while Vigdula means and the glory. The Olam means forever, and Amen means, of course, Amen. But you will learn the secret of the word Amen in a later lesson. Thus, the first part of the ritual translates, for thine is the kingdom and the power and glory forever. Amen. This sound is familiar. It is the first part of the Lord's Prayer, and although this was added to the original text of the prayers as it appears in the Gospels, it does seem to prove that at least some of the early Christians knew the secrets of the Kabbalah. Several of the words used here refer directly to the symbols of primary import in the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. There are many variations in this part of the ritual. The Golden Dawn in the step 2 above pointed to the chest. Thelemites, those who follow the teachings of Aleister Crowley, pointed to the chest between step 1 and step 2 above and vibrate the name Awas. At that point, Awas, Crowley believed, was the name of his, which is Crowley's, holy guardian angel and was an extraterrestrial intelligence. Alexander, founder of the Alexandrian system of Wicca, at step 1 vibrates Kether, and in step 2 points to the stomach instead of Amen. Some people prefer Aum or Aumgn, or even a combination such as Aumen. As a final note to this section, if you have not figured it out as yet, what you have done is to visualize yourself as a center of the universe with only the divine light coming through you. You may wish to remain in this position for a few minutes to feel its power. Part 2, the formulation of the pentagrams. Step 1. Going to your left, move around to the front of your altar to the edge of the space of your circle so that you are at the east edge of the circle, facing away from the middle of the circle where your altar stands. In other words, you are at the east, facing east. Here, draw the pentagram as described in the last lesson. Be sure to visualize the figure as a flaming gas jet blue pentagram as you draw. Step 2. Inhale through the nose as you feel the energy from the flow from the ends of the universe through your nose and body and down out of the bottoms of your feet to the center of the earth. You are no longer at the center of your magical circle, and thus at the center of the universe as the first part of this ritual. As you inhale, both hands should be raised to the sides of your head by your ears. The dagger or right hand index finger should be pointing forward. Your left hand, which should have remained at your side until now, is drawn into a similar position by your left ear. The index finger pointing forward. The rest of the fingers close into a fist. Step 3. Step forward with the left foot. At the same time, thrust your hands forward so that they point at the exact middle of the glowing blue pentagram in front of you. This position is known as the God form and is the God form known as the Enterer. As you do this, you should exhale and feel the energy coming back up your body, out your arms and hands, through the pentagram into the ends of the universe. You should use the entire exhalation to vibrate the God name Yud He Vav He. Step 4. Bring your hands back to your ears while bringing your foot back to its original position. Put your left hand down by your side and point to the center of the pentagram with your right forefinger or dagger. Now trace a line in the air at the height of the center of the pentagram as you move in a clockwise direction around the edge of your circle pace. You should go 90 degrees so that you end up in the south facing south. As you trace the line in the air, you should visualize a brilliant white light emanating from the tip of your finger or blade. At the south, repeat parts 1 and 2. Step A, but vibrate Adonai. Step 5, repeat as above, but move to the west and vibrate Eheye. Step 6, repeat as above, but move to the north, vibrate Agla. And step 7, complete the circle by connecting a white line from the north to the east where you began. Then, moving in the same clockwise direction, come back behind the altar and in front of the chair as when you started the ritual. You should once again be facing to the east. See the diagram below. Note, if you do not have room for a circle, just pivot where you stand behind the altar. Step 8. Now visualize the brilliant white circle expanding up and down to form a sphere above, below, and all around you. What you have done is create a sphere in brilliant white all around you with electric blue pentagrams at the quarters, which have been charged and sealed with the names of God. In most major cities of the United States, there are newspapers which have given away the ads pay all the costs, and they frequently have listings of events going on in the community. As a result of those listings, I have twice gone to see Jewish scholars who are allegedly rabbis talk on the Kabbalah. Both times were wasted and show that these men knew nothing of the Kabbalah, or at least thought so little of their audience that they chose not to share none of their knowledge. One even went so far as to tell his preliminary Jewish audience to forget about the Kabbalah because Jews should only believe in one God, and while the Christians have given us 3 gods, referring to the Christian Trinity of the God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Kabbalists have given us 10, referring to the 10 names of God in the Tree of Life. This shows a total lack of understanding, which must be cleared up now. Either that or those scholars must explain why the most famous and important historical rabbis such as Isaac Luria and Baal Shem Tov were polytheistic Kabbalists. Kabbalah is a monotheistic tradition, and the Kabbalah, the ultimate divine source, is beyond the comprehension of our mortal minds, but we can know and become in harmony with parts of aspects of the whole. These various aspects are represented by the different God names. So let's compare these notions of divine to a very down-to-earth person we call Jim Smith. He is a mother. His mother calls him son. His wife calls him dear. His daughter calls him daddy. His son calls him dad. His boss calls him Smith. You get the picture. Thus, we have a man with 10 names. Further names represent the type of the relationship people have with him. Imagine that he would think of his wife started to call him Honey Poo. Certainly, he would take notice of his son instead of calling him dad, said, Father, there's something I want to talk to you about. In some way, there are many names for God, but there is only one source for all. We can learn more about the divine source by learning about those aspects of God which have already available to us. That is by tuning in to what is represented by the names of God. Yudhehvahvheh, Yud-He-Vav-He, is known as the holy, ultimate, and unspeakable name of God. Its true pronunciation is unknown. In English, we could say that it is formed of the letters YHVH. Jews never pronounce the word, instead saying Adonai by replacing the Hebrew vowels of Adonai, which means my Lord, around the 4 letters which are known as the Tetragrammaton, and the word Yehovah or Jehovah is formed. Therefore, to use these names shows a total misunderstanding of this holy name. Yahweh or Yahweh is also a misdemeanor, an attempt to pronounce a word with no vowels. You see, YHVH may merely be an abbreviation for a longer word for a code for other letters. It is possible some of the letters of this name are doubled. No one knows for sure Yud-He-Vav-He is the English translation for how the Hebrew letters represented by the HYVH are named. The Y, or Yud, is said to represent archetypal masculinity, the Taoist Yang, or Janguan Anumis. And the first H, called the He superior, represents archetypal femininity, the Taoist Yin, or the Jungian Anima. The V, called Vav in Hebrew, looks like an extended Yud. There is a deep magical mystery here, and represents physical masculinity, while the last H in the He interior represents physical femininity. Thus, this ultimate name of God and the Tetragrammaton, the YHVH, says that God is ultimately unity, a perfect blend of all dualities, as represented by the male-female symbolism on all planes. Certainly, this is not a bad notion of the essence of divinity. Eheye means I am or I shall be. It is the name God revealed to Moses at the burning bush. In the story, God tells Moses to go to Egypt and free the Hebrews, to which Moses asks, "Who shall I say sent me?" God's response is Eheye, I share Eheye, meaning I am that I am, or I shall be that I shall be. Agla is how the next God name is pronounced, but it is most commonly spelled Agla. This is because of its abbreviation for the words Ata, Bor Li Olam Adonai, which means Thou art great forever, my Lord. And it is from a Hebrew prayer that these four God names are associated with the direction and magical elements of the four quarters. Part 3, the evocation of the archangels. Step 1. Spread your arms straight out to the sides so that your body forms a cross. If you have a dagger, the point should be up. Take a second or two to once again feel the energies flowing through you and making you a brilliant cross of light at the center of the universe. The cross also represents the four archetypal elements of air, earth, fire, and water. More on this later. Step 2. Visualize a figure on a hill in front of you. The figure is dressed in yellow robes, which have some purplish highlights. The figure carries a caduceus wand, a symbol used by doctors, a wand entwined with serpents, which represents the life force. And the figure's robes wave in the wind. You should feel a breeze coming from behind the figure. Say before me, Raphael. Vibrate the name of the archangel. Step 3, visualize a figure behind you, dressed in blue with some orange highlights. The figure holds a cup and is surrounded by waterfalls. Try to feel the moisture in the air. Say behind me, Gabriel, and vibrate the name. Step 4, to your right, visualize a figure dressed in scarlet with green highlights. The figure holds a flaming sword, and you should feel heat coming from this direction. Say, on my right hand, Mythikael. Vibrate the name. The ch is guttural sound, as in the German ach or the Scottish loch. Step 5, to your left, visualize a figure dressed in green and brown as a fertile landscape, and the figure holds the sheaves of wheat. Say, on my left, Oriel. Move your left foot out to your left and visualize another beautiful blue pentagram all around you, outlining your body, and say, for above me flames a pentagram. Step 7, visualize a golden hexagram, a six-pointed star, sometimes called a Jewish star, within your right, where your heart is, and say, within me shines a six-rayed star. Part 4, repeat part 1, the Kabbalistic cross. Again, other people have slightly different visions for the evocation of the archangel section. In one, you would say, around me flames a pentagram, above me shines a six-pointed star. Another one is, before me is the pentagram, and behind me is a six-rayed star. There are minor differences, but might like to try them and see how they affect you. After doing the Lesser Banishing Ritual, LBRP, sit in a chair and do the Terra Contemplation Ritual. Thus, the order for your practical daily work should be as follows: the Relaxation Ritual, Lesser Banishing Ritual, the Pentagram, and the Terra Contemplation Ritual. In the next page, you will find a summary which gives the schematic of the LBRP without any of the explanations. Use it as you learn the ritual, but this ritual should be memorized. Vibratory Formula. In the LBRP, there are words which are meant to be said forcefully and with authority, such as, for above me flames the pentagram. But there are also words in Hebrew which are meant to be vibrated. You may have come across the expression before in your reading, and it will now be explained in full. It has long been an occult secret that all matter is made of vibrations. Today, many scientists depend on this being in the fact of research. We follow this assumption that all matter is vibratory energy. Then magic becomes a type of science which allows a person to affect vibrations. It becomes very valuable for us to develop an understanding of how to control vibratory energy. There is a physical phenomenon known as harmonic resonance. This simply means that if one object vibrates powerfully enough, the other object nearby will start to vibrate or resonate. with the first if the second object has a natural vibratory rate in harmony with the first. As an example, if a violin note is played near a piano, the piano strings which have certain harmonic relationships to the violin note will sound. It will start to resonate. Thus, if you can control the vibratory rate of one object, such as yourself, you will be able to cause certain reactions in other objects, such as those which exist in other planes of existence. Therefore, an understanding of how to vibrate words is essential for a magician. The following is a brief, short description of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. Step 1. Touch your forehead and vibrate ta. Point down, covering the groin, vibrate Malkut. Touch the right shoulder, vibrate Vig Bu-Ra. Touch the left shoulder, vibrate Vig Du-La. Fold hands at chest and vibrate Li Olam Amen. Then go to the east, draw the pentagram, point to the center, vibrate Yud He Vav He. Step 7, carry line to S, draw the pentagram, point to the center, and vibrate Adonai. Step 8, repeat, but carry line to the west and vibrate Eheye. And repeat as above, but carry the line to the north and vibrate Agla. Finally, carry the line to the east, completing the circle, returning to the center. Your hands are out, saying before me, Raphael, behind me, Gabriel, on my right, Michael, and on my left, Oriel. For all about me flames the pentagram, and within me the saint's pointed star. Repeat steps 1 through 5. There are two methods of vibrating words, commonly known as two vibratory formulae. First is an internal invocation for formula. In this formula, you cause a certain part of your body, actual part of your astral body, to vibrate. This is exemplified in the Kabbalist cross part of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. Let's just look at the word ta. What you should do here is fully inhale until there isn't room for one more air of drop. Thus, use the entire exhalation to vibrate the word. Thus, the word elongated, ta. It should be vibrated loudly in an almost chant-like tone of voice. The pitch is usually higher than the normal pitch of your voice. It is almost shouted. Most importantly, you should feel it vibrate or resonate within your head. Likewise, Malkut should be felt in the groin, Vig Bu-Ra in the area of the right shoulder, and etc. The second vibratory method is the external evocatory formula. With this formula, the intent is to excite the atmosphere, actually the so-called astral plane around you. This is exemplified in the formulation of the pentagram part of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. The method is quite similar to the invocationary formula. You inhale fully. As you exhale loudly, vibrate the appropriate words. In this case, the God names. Here, the God names are stretched out as Gla. You should use the entire exhalation in sounding the God names or words when doing the evocatory vibratory formula. The big difference between the two formula is that in the evocation formula, you should sense that the entire universe is in front of you, is resonating in harmony with your vibration. Your entire body and the entire universe should be experienced as vibrating to your call. There are some minor variations on these basic formulas, such as seeing the words you wish to vibrate in flames before you, and making the vibration change and empower those flames. Another method, as you spell out the word according to a certain method within your body. These variations are not as important as the instructions given. Some student magicians do not have the luxury or place where they can loudly, firmly, authoritatively vibrate the God names and words of power. In fact, they need to keep their work a secret. If you find yourself in such a position, you may use what is distinguishedly called the great voice. That is, you may do the vibratory formula silently or very quietly, perhaps at the level of a whisper or quiet conversation. However, if you do so, you must still experience the vibratory phenomena. You must feel the various parts of your body vibrate when doing the invocation vibratory formula. You must sense the entire universe resonating in harmony to your use of the evocationary formula. In other words, you must have the same result whether you vibrate loudly or in a great voice. You must use the great voice regularly, as suggested that you find a place to practice using your full, loud voice several times, finding a place where you can be alone to do so. When everything around you seems to change slightly, you will know that you are vibrating the words correctly. These changes are not physical ones, but the area will feel different. If you practice by using the LBRP, a good idea, the area will feel cleaner and fresher. You may also find that you will have to adjust the pitch of your voice either up or down in order to make everything vibrate correctly. When you hit the pitch which is correct for you, you will know it. Your voice will sound much louder and more commanding, and the air will seem to be alive with crackling energy. Then you will know what is meant when it is said that the voice of the true magician is an awesome thing to hear. As a final note to the LBRP, remember to include everything you are doing in your magical diary or grimoire as most importantly. Doing the LBRP with feeling, doing it often, and inflaming yourself with prayer. Part 2. One of the biggest fears of many occultists is psychic attack. However, the fact of the matter is that true psychics are very rare. The reason they are so rare is that by the time a person has enough skill and talent to attack psychologically, he or she also has enough magical knowledge to know not to attack someone. In the past 10 years, I have had at least 100 people ask for my help because they felt that they were under psychic attack. I also know many psychological teachers and psychics who have told me of their experience with people who have come to them claiming to be under psychic attack. Of the hundreds of claims of psychic attacks of which I've heard, perhaps 5 cases were real while the others were imaginary. Be that as it may, the feeling of being under psychic attack can be a very real feeling. Also, your psyches are constantly under attack from society. Salesmen order us to buy. TV ads order us to buy. Capitalism. Friends, family, and even strangers, knowingly or not, try to psychologically maneuver you and influence us. Thus, we need to be aware of the day-to-day brainwashing we are receiving, along with having the knowledge of what we do if a real psychic attack occurs. A real psychic attack is not usually caused by a person doing a spell to harm you. Rather, it is caused by a person or persons who for some reason are angry with you. Their rage causes them to unknowingly send a stream of energy filled with their anger towards you. What is most likely, however, is that you simply believe that some negativity is coming towards you. In either case, you will still feel as if you are under attack, and both cases can be dealt with in the same way. Dealing with psychic attack. This excellent method of repelling psychic attack is derived from Dinning and Phillips' Practical Guide to Physics, Self-Defense, and Well-Being. Close your eyes and pivot in a circle until you can sense the direction from which the real or imagined stream of negative energy is coming. Once you find that direction, boldly face that way. The path of a magician is not one for cowards. Stand proudly and erect and visualize on your forehead a bright electric blue pentagram with a 1 point uppermost. Now bring your hands up to your forehead to surround the glowing star. The hand should be flat with the palms meeting at the brows, fingers meeting above, palms out. Thus you have a triangle. The so-called triangle of manifestation surrounding the pentagram with the thumbs as the base line of the triangle. See the figure? Now take a deep breath, and as you exhale, step forward with your left foot and thrust your hands forward, while at the same time visualizing the pentagram on your forehead flying out in the direction that you are facing. This will have the effect of sending away the negativity of the real or imagined psychic attack. To keep it from returning, immediately do the entire LBRP. Dealing with day-to-day attacks on your psyche from a multiplicity of sources is another matter. Doing the LBRP helps, but the problem is really one of awareness. The fact of the matter is that most of us are virtually unconscious, asleep for up to 95% of the day. Awakening the sleepers was one of the main foci of the work of George Gorbachev. I also urge you to read as many books as you can on psychology, as this will awaken you to how the mind works and how people manipulate one another. Magically, another way of becoming more awake to the world around us involves becoming more in tune with the universe. One way to do this is to record in your magical diary the day, date, and phase of the moon. There are also 4 brief, less than 30 seconds each rituals which will help you attune you to the sun as it daily traverses the sky. The 4 adorations, based on Crowley's Liber Res Vel Helios. At sunrise or when you awaken, face the east, make the sign of the Enterer. This was given in the LBRP. When stand upright with your arms up as if you were supporting a heavy pole above your head. In a loud voice, if possible, if not, then silently pray. Hail unto thee, O art Ra, in thy rising, even unto thee who art Ra in thy strength, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the uprising of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendor at the prow. The Rahor abideth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of the night. Finally, stamp on the ground 1 time with your left foot and bring your left forefinger to your lips as if telling someone to be quiet. In fact, this is known as the sign of silence and the sign of horse, or the sign of horse. Tahuti is the Egyptian for the god commonly known as Thoth. The rest of the symbolism can be easily understood by consulting a book in Egyptian gods. At noon, face south, make the sign of the Enterer, form the triangle of manifestation, only hold it slightly above your head. Here it represents the element of fire, as the previous position represents the element of air. Say, hail unto thee, O art Hathor, in thy triumphing, even unto thee who art Hathor in thy beauty, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the mid-course of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendor at the prow, and Rahor abideth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of the morning. Make the sign of silence. At sunset, face west. Make the sign of the Enterer. Form the triangle with your hands. Only do it over your stomach and with the palms forward. The thumbs at the top of and the forefingers pointed down. This position or God form represents the element of water. See diagram. Thus, you have a downward pointing triangle in front of your stomach. Say, hail unto thee who art turned in thy setting, even unto thee who art tomb in thy joy, who travellest over the heavens in thy bark at the downgoing of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendor at the prow, and Rahor abideth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of the day. Make the sign of silence. At midnight, or before you go to sleep, face the north, make the sign of the Enterer, and step forward 1 pace with your left foot, and raise your right hand above your head, palm forward, as if greetings. See a diagram. You should be in the same position as seen in old cowboy films where the Indian raises his right hand and says, how. And you now say, hail unto thee who art Kafera in thy hiding, even unto thee who art Kafera in thy silence, who travellest over the heavens in the bark of the midnight hour of the sun. Tahuti standeth in his splendor at the prow, and Rahor abideth at the helm. Hail unto thee from the abodes of the evening. Make the sign of silence, of course. The god form in the diagram above represents the element of earth. Advanced work for the 4 adorations. If you find the 4 adorations very simple, you may wish to add the following visualizations. The overall purposes are 1. To attune you to the changes of the sun. 2. To attune you to the 4 magical elements. And 3. To attune you to the universe and hence the divine. The visualizations. 1. When you face east at sunrise, visualize yourself imbued with the color yellow filled with the qualities of air and heat and moisture. 2. When you face the south at noon, visualize yourself imbued with the color of red filled with the qualities of fire, heat, and dryness. 3. When you face the west at sunset, visualize yourself imbued with the color of blue, filled with the qualities of light, cold, and moisture. 4. When you face the north at midnight, visualize yourself imbued with the colors of the fertile earth, especially greens and browns, filled with the qualities of earth, cold, and dryness. To finish this part of the second lesson, let me reiterate the real psychic attack is very rare. One time I knew I was under a psychic attack and decided to do nothing to see what would happen. The result was that I got 6 free books in the mail and a check for $50. However, the sensation of being under a psychic attack can be very real, so I urge you to learn the techniques of this lesson. Also, do not avoid the performance daily of the 4 adorations. Even if I am very ill, I can spend a few seconds doing them. Part 3. In the following pages, I will be discussing the history and some of the basic theories of the Kabbalah. One complaint I frequently hear from many people is that the Kabbalah is confusing or boring. In fact, it is neither. But it may take several readings of the following material to get a feeling for the intricacies of the Kabbalistic thought. Just go through the following pages at our leisure while you practice the daily ritual, which is compared of the Relaxation Ritual, LBRP, and Terra Contemplation Ritual. Also, work with the 4 adorations and the techniques for defeating real or imagined psychic attack. Although I have explained the Kabbalah and its history hundreds of times in my classes, there are usually 1 or 2 people who do not immediately quite catch into the ideas represented. So take a week or 2 practicing the rituals and perhaps making your robe and go over the following pages as many times as necessary. It is said that there were 3 literatures for the ancient Hebrews: the Torah, which was comprised of the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Talmud, commentaries on the Torah, and the Kabbalah, mystical interpretations of the Torah, and speculations on the nature of God and the universe. The Torah was known as the body of the tradition, and it was said that if ignorant people would read the Torah, they would profit from the experience. The Talmud was called the Jew's rational soul, and those who were learned from profit in its study. The Kabbalah was called the Jew's immortal soul, and the wise were advised to meditate upon it. You may have noticed that different books and authors spell the word Kabbalah in different ways. This is because the word Kabbalah comes directly from the Hebrew, and there is no precise translation between English and Hebrew. This gives me a chance to interject some thoughts concerning the Hebrew language. Many of the rituals in this course, such as the LBRP, will be using words from the Hebrew, but all languages, including Hebrew, changed in their pronunciation over the centuries. As an example, the word night was once today pronounced night, was originally pronounced knight, with a short I, knight, and the GH being a harsh guttural version of the CH in the Scottish word lock. Thus, English has changed over the past few hundred years. Is it any wonder that the Hebrew was changed over the past 2,000 years? Turning to look at Hebrew as it is spoken today in Israel and in synagogues around the world, and discounted local dialects, does not help our understanding of Hebrew pronunciation, for modern Hebrew is not the same as biblical Hebrew. About 100 years ago, a man named Eliezer Dun Yehuda came to believe that Hebrew should once again become a living language. It has been relegated merely to religious documents and study rooms, much in the way that Latin is today. Through his efforts, Hebrew, like a phoenix, rose from the dead and became a living language and was adopted as the language of the state of Israel. This would compare with the idea of having all the people in Italy learn Latin and use it as their everyday tongue. But in the process of bringing Hebrew back from death back to life, many changes in the language's very nature took place. 1. Certain letters which had 2 different sounds no longer do. See the book Sepher Yetzirah for a list of all the original double-sounding letters. 2. The Hebrew letter called the Vav or Vav, usually having a V sound, may have originally sounded like our W and was called the Raw. 3. Even today, certain Hebrew letters can have several sounds. The Aleph can sound like A or E or Ah. The Yud can sound like U, A or E. The He can indicate A or He. The system of points and lines to indicate the vowels were added hundreds of years after the Ezra compiled the Torah, circa 400 to 300 BC, so they may not be accurate. 4. Perhaps, worst of all, mystical speaking is that to make Hebrew a modern language, bin Yehuda had to take out much of the Hebrew's wonderful lack of precision. As an example, the word olam originally seemed to have meant world, universe, aeons, and forever. This showed that to the ancient Hebrew mind all of these things were related. Now, unfortunately, much of the knowledge is lost, and as in modern Hebrew, words are more meaning specific. 5. Many Hebrew words are replaced by Aramaic words. As an example, in ancient Hebrew, Yav or Ab meant father. In modern Hebrew, the word father is the Aramaic Abba. The next question is, should we try to discover the ancient Hebrew pronunciation? After all, isn't the way the words are pronounced important? The answer is yes. The way the words are pronounced is important, but no, it's not worth our time to seek out the ancient pronunciations of Hebrew. Most of the rituals used today were really created long after biblical Hebrew was a mere memory. In this course, the pronunciations used are those of the modern Hebrew. In this way, you will be tapping into the energies of millions of people who speak the tongue every day, rather than guessing at what ancient Hebrew may have sounded like. After this digression, let us now return to the word of import, Kabbalah. Kabbalah, or Kabbalah, it's a lot of pronunciations. QBL, etc. Comes from Hebrew word which means to receive, implying that the Kabbalah is a received doctrine, that is, received from God. It also means that it is given by one person and received by another, usually in an oral manner. Thus, the true Kabbalah was an oral secret tradition, which for thousands of years was jealously guarded from the profane. Like the Terra, there are two types of histories of the Kabbalah. The first is the mythological history, the second is known, and the factual history. The mythological history of the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah was a secret science known to the angels and to God before the creation of the universe. After Adam and Eve fell from their grace in the Garden of Eden, an angel taught the wisdom to Adam so that grace and purity might be regained. I notice similarities here between this story and that of the Prometheus who brought fire or divine wisdom to the human race. I wonder which story came first. This knowledge of Adam passed on to his sons, but was later forgotten or lost. After the deluge, God not only gave the rainbow as a sign of his covenant with humanity, but also instructed Noah and his sons in the secret knowledge, but as before, the knowledge was eventually forgotten or lost. You may by now be seeing a trend developing for the reception and loss of the secret knowledge. Angels instructed Abraham in the wisdom. He in turn instructed Isaac, and from there he went to Jacob. But during the captivity in Egypt, it was again lost. The knowledge was this time recovered by Moses. So the story goes on, spent 40 days on the top of Mount Sinai, and the traditionalists wish us to believe that all of the obtained from God was the two stone tablets with the Decalogue, which are the 10 Commandments, in them. The mystical interpretation is that the first time Moses went up, he received the secrets of the Kabbalah from God, but destroyed them upon seeing idol worship. He returned to the top of the mountain, but God would not allow Moses to share the secrets of the Kabbalah with the common people. Instead, like little children, the name children of Israel was very appropriate in this context. They were told that they could and could not do in the form of the in the form of the 10 Commandments and the other laws of the Torah. Moses, who already had received the Kabbalah, was told that he could only give the secrets to his brother Aaron, and the future high priest of the Hebrews. As a side note, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the first real great archaeological discoveries in Egypt took place. People around the world, especially occultists, who at times are not the most level-headed of people, were fascinated by the secrets of ancient Egypt and ancient Kim. Thus, when they read in the Bible that Moses was educated in Egypt, they assumed that the Kabbalah had an Egyptian origin. While it is true that there were mystery schools in Egypt, in fact, Pythagoras studied at one, there were no proof that the Kabbalah is taken directly from the wisdom of Egypt. And so it was that the mystical secrets of the Kabbalah were kept for hundreds of years by the Hebrew priesthood. But the common Hebrew man and woman did not learn the lessons of the Decalogue and the other laws which God had intended them to learn. Thus, God punished the people of Israel over and over until the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 A.D. Rome had ordered the destructions, and had wanted rabble-rousers and freedom-loving people, freedom-loving troublemakers rounded up. One of these was a rabbi named Simeon ben, sometimes written Bar Yochai. He managed to evade the Romans by hiding with his son in a cave for 13 years. There is a special meaning in the number 13, which will be revealed later in this course. In a cave, these two learned men wrote down the secrets of the Kabbalah for the first time in a large set of books entitled the Zohar, the Book of Splendor, and the small Sepher Yetzirah, Book of Formation, later. When publishing became practical, thanks to Gutenberg, these books became available to people all over the world. Thus, it was that although the diaspora, the exile of Jews throughout the world after the destruction of the Second Temple, has been decried by most of Jews, those of the mystical bent have held that the diaspora was of God's gift to all mankind, because in that way the Jews were able to spread the divine wisdom all over the world rather than keeping it hidden in a small section of the Middle East. I think that this will be a great time to give a small tale of my personal history. Before I was born, my father decided to change the family name. He said the family name has been Katz, and as a child he had been kidded in school by being called Pussycats. So after my older brother was born, my father decided to change the family name so his son would not be kidded. But the name Katz is an abbreviation or acronym in the Kabbalah. It is called a Notarikon, of which more will be said later. It is short for Kohan Zik Dek, with a vowel added between the initial letters of the two words. It means righteous priest. Thus, I may be a descendant of the ancient priestly caste, and thus may by right learn and share the Kabbalah. But before you think this bit of knowledge has gone to my head, let me remind you that this revelation comes in section titled Mythological, the factual history of the Kabbalah. Little is known as to where the Kabbalah actually originated, and there do seem to be elements of ancient Chaldean, Egyptian, and even pre-Aryan Indian mysticism, as well as elements drawn from other less well-known Semitic peoples hidden in its depths. More modern aspects of the Kabbalah either were heavily influenced by Neoplatonic theories or in fact influenced by Neoplatonists, their earliest known form of Hebrew mysticism, not counting earliest shamanic forms which seem to exist in all primitive tribes and societies, was not even called Kabbalah. The earliest form of Hebrew occultism was known as Hichelot, with the CH sounding like that in Scottish word lock, which means accent. It is also known as Merkava mysticism. The Merkava was the name of the throne of God in Hebrew, and it was the aim of the Merkava mystics to be able to see God upon his throne. Fortunately, most of the writing of the Merkava writers have been lost, so that full knowledge of their techniques is impossible. From what little we have, we know that their sources seem to be based upon mystical contemplation of the early chapters of Genesis and the vision of Ezekiel. These methods are known respectively as Ma'aseh Ba'arishit and Ma'aseh Rekaba. From the fragments of Merkava mysticism which still remain, it is assumed that the actual practices of these mystics involved astral travel through a series of 7 planes, by way of certain passwords, talismans, and secret signs while in the state of self-induced trance, possibly via self-hypnosis, drugs, or sex. The names of each of these guards at each of the 7 places had to be known so they could be appeased in some way which today is unknown. Here, for the first time in any popular course or book, to my knowledge, are the correct names which are known from the fragments of the book Perkei Haichalot. First place, Diavel, Kashrel, Garel, Botel, Tofel, Dariel, Makel, Shariel, though some say Shiviel. Second palace, Tagriel, Matfiel, Sariel, Arfiel, Shirariel, Sartiel, Ragiel, and Sahaviel. Third place, Shivoriel, Retziziel, Shalmoiel, Saviel, Zerhiel, Adriel, Bizarriel. Note, there are only 7 guards listed in the fragments, not the usual 8, implying that one of the names has been lost. Fourth place, Fourth Palace, Pashidiel, Gevortiel, Kuzuriel, Shekiniel, Shetaikiel, Araziel, Kovaio, and Anaphiel. Fifth Palace, Taziel, Uziliel, Gateliel, Sofriel, Gareliel, Dariel, Phalatriel. There are 9 guards listed here, which one is too many. Sixth place. Sixth Palace, Katzmiel, Gahorgiel, Romiel, Azavarsbiel, Argomiel, Feratiel, Makakiel, and Tororfiel. For the 7th palace, there were names for ascending and descending, the means of which is unclear. My guess is that different names were used to get in and get out, since other techniques, how to get into trance, how to astral travel, and appropriate passwords and needed talismans are unknown. I am not going to give a listing of the names of the rest of the guardians, as they might lead to some unwise experimentation. My purpose in listing the names of the guards, which in the tradition needed to be memorized, merely has been to show you the complexity of the system. Those who wish to go further into the topic have the name of one of the few sources in the preceding paragraph. The final goal of the Merkava writer was to be able to gaze upon the throne of God and upon God himself. This was no easy task, as you can see from the small amount of material I have given above. Also, remember that even Moses was not allowed to view the face of God, for it was said that no mortal could gaze upon the face of God and survive. There are obvious similarities to Egyptian lore as presented in the so-called Egyptian Book of the Dead, especially the idea of going through various places, hells, and the Egyptian. The Egyptian hells should not be confused with the Christian idea of hell. The passing tests in order to pass safely through these nether realms. Did the Hebrews copy from the Egyptians, or vice versa? Or did both come from an older source? Or perhaps both cultures, along with others such as the Tibetan and Armenian, just happen to tap into the same mystical current? Nobody knows. Moving into the actual Kabbalistic period of Hebrew mysticism, we come across the first well-known Kabbalistic book, the Sepher Yetzirah, or Book of Formation. This book seems to be a combination of the earlier Merkava mysticism and the more modern Kabbalah. The Sepher Yetzirah, along with another work, the Bihar, have been traced back to the early centuries of the Common Era. Within them are discussions of such things as emanations from divinity bringing about the universe. This idea is known today as Neoplatonism. However, if we assume that the Kabbalah was either brought to the Egyptians by the Hebrews, or that the Egyptians had the knowledge prior to the period of the enslavement of the Hebrews, then it might be that Neoplatonism was a development of the Kabbalah. As stated before, it is well documented that Pythagoras, who is still famous for the Pythagorean theorem, the sum of the squares of two triangle sides of a right triangle is equal to the square of the hypotenuse, studied mysticism and was initiated into the Egyptian mystery school. It is not unlikely that he learned some early form of Kabbalah there and brought it back to his home in the Greek city-states. It is not possible that Plato, in his later followers, adopted the idea and emanations as a result of studying in Pythagoras' mystery school began when Pythagoras returned to the Greek Isles from the Middle East. Of course, this speculation, but is based on probabilities. The Kabbalistic mysticism continued to develop during the centuries of the Common Era. Since the beginning of the dysphoria cannot be disputed. It is one of the reasons that Jews were hated and feared. Part of the Kabbalah is related to the magical abilities, and many people fear magic. In the 14th century, Moses de Leon made the first printing of the Zohar in the classic Kabbalistic text. Some modern scholars and some contemporaries of de Leon have called it fraud. They say that it was not the original Zohar of legend written by Simeon ben Yochai, and that de Leon forged the entire work. Although I do not claim to be a great archaeological scholar, I find this contention hard to accept. Parts of the whole long work in various forms have been discovered in other works dating before the 14th century. However, it does seem likely that De Leon did edit and add some of his own mystical philosophy to the Zohar. Even so, let us assume for a moment that Moses de Leon did create the Zohar, and as it is printed today, the most complete tradition fills 5 volumes. If also It is a monumental work of mystical thought. Besides, whether it is ancient or relatively recent, it should be studied for what it is in it, not for who wrote it. To sum up, the Kabbalah is not a single book or simple mystical idea. Rather, it is a whole system of mystical thought and action. It is a mystical underpinning for it is the mystical underpinnings for Judaism, Christianity, and to a lesser extent Islam. As the Middle Ages developed in Europe, many locations became Kabbalistic centers, the most important ones being in Spain. But in 1492, the year Columbus sailed, the Jews were expelled from Spain, and it is for this reason that some people believe that the Columbus actually Cristobal Colon was his name in Spanish, and Colon may have been a variation of Cohen, may have been Jewish, but that as it may, many of the Jews returned to the Middle East, and a large, important Kabbalistic center developed in the city of Sepher. Two things happened which took the Kabbalah away from being part of the mainstream of Judaism. One was a book by the respected Rabbi Moses Maimonides called A Guide for Perplexed. In this book, rational, by Western scientific terms, solutions to theoretical and philosophical problems in Judaism were given. A virtual war of words developed between the followers of Maimonides' rational approaches. There is still much mysticism and magic even in his rationality, and those who believed in the Kabbalah. This war went on for years, the most famous proponent of the Kabbalah being the Rabbi Maimonides. Meanwhile, many schools of the Kabbalah had developed, each with slightly different ideas of Kabbalistic theory and practice, such as the schools of Isaac Luria, Isaac the Blind. The final blow, along with the guide of the perplexed, came in the form of a man named Sabbatia Zvi, 1626 to 1676. Zvi, or Zebi, or Zwi, had an intense, charismatic personality. Sabbatai Zebi had an intense, charismatic personality. He was also very learned in both standard and Kabbalistic Jewish knowledge. He became more and more popular in the Middle East until he was proclaimed by his followers as the Messiah, Savior of the Jews. He never denied that he was the Messiah. Word of his magical powers, wisdom, and godliness spread via Jewish traders to Jewish communities throughout the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. In the Middle East, where he spent most of his life, he developed many diehard zealots as followers. Finally, the Islamic Sultan could no longer ignore him. The resultant meeting between the two led to the discreditment of Zebi and his conversion to Islam, following which he was exiled to a prison in Albania, where he died as a false messiah. Deceived, Jewry tried to forget and put out of their lives everything which reminded them of Zebi. In fact, in Jewish books, he was frequently merely called that one. Since Zebi was associated with the Kabbalah and magic, this too was discarded and the position of Maimonides was accepted. Except for small groups of secretive believers, Judaism deserted the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah was saved from being perhaps totally lost by those Christians whose goals was to study the inner teachings of Judaism in order to prove that Jesus was in fact the Christ, the Jewish Messiah, and thus turn all of Jews into Christians. As you can see, there are still Jews in the world today, and the attempt failed. But it did cause the translations of many documents and books which have never been translated out of the Hebrew or Aramaic. The possibility of real magical secrets which were holy and not satanic in nature caught the fancy of many scholars and clerics, up to and including Eliphas Levi, born Alphonse Louis Constant. Levi's most famous work, translated poorly into English, is now in print under the title Transcendental Magic. His books and teachings helped start what has been called the French occult revolution of the 19th century. At this time, many occult groups began to develop in French and spread to other countries, most notably Austria, Germany, and England. Some of these groups used their occultism to support questionable ethics, leading to magical wars between cult groups in France and the evils of Nazism in Germany. Looking for a second back on the lighter side of occultism, we come in England to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, whose primary importance came in their taking the teachings of the Kabbalah as a basis for their occultism and uniting with other forms of occultism, such as the magical systems of Egypt, the Enochian magic of the Abrahamium, and mysticism from India, as well as other sources. We will deal with all of these as needed be in this course. The Kabbalah, which we study in this course, is a modern Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is a philosophical system of life as well as a magical system, and as such has changed over the centuries to meet the needs of the people of the current society. Besides differences in interpretations of the Kabbalah based on different sects' attitudes, there are two major divisions in the Kabbalah today. First, there is what I call the Kosher Kabbalah. This has come about as a result of the need for a Jewish spiritual rebirth. Right now, in America at least, the number of Jews is rapidly decreasing. Oh, there may be more Jews numerically, but for many it is merely a group of association and nothing more. I feel that this is at least in part due to the extreme lack of spirituality found in some of the major forms of Judaism. This has resulted in a leaning away from the standard Judaism and the fact that there is a disproportionality large percentage of Jews being attracted to various cults which disguise themselves as religions. But some Jews are looking toward their own spiritual roots and are rediscovering their Kabbalistic heritage. The Kosher Kabbalah, then, has a particularly Jewish tone to it. It benefits all students of the mystical as we are obtaining more and more ancient Kabbalistic words which are being translated into Western tongues, but because it is so oriented toward one point of view, it is not our main concern. The WASP Kabbalah follows in the traditions of the Golden Dawn. This system of Kabbalah universalizes the Kabbalistic wisdom so that it may be accepted by all, no matter your particular faith or lack thereof. This syncretistic system of the Kabbalah is one which we will be studying. Because the Kabbalah has been safeguarded for thousands of years by the Jewish culture, it is obvious that it will have, in many instances, a Jewish flavor. That is why we'll be using many words which are in Hebrew. However, since we'll be studying the WASP Kabbalah and not the Kosher Kabbalah, since we are studying a universalized Kabbalah, you do not have to be or become a Jew or Christian or pagan, follow any particular religion or belief in order to study the philosophical and magical techniques of the Kabbalah and traditional ceremonial magic. There are four main branches to the Kabbalah, some aspects of each overlapping each other. 1. The dogmatic Kabbalah. This concerns the study of the literatures of the Kabbalah, such as the Torah, the Sepher, Yetzirah, and the Bihar, the Zohar, and many others. Although the study is fascinating, it is not the focus of this course. The names of various books and appropriate sections from them or ideas from them will be given when they are needed, but the dogmatic Kabbalah will not be a primary concern for this lesson. Second, the practical Kabbalah. This refers to the making of talismans and amulets via Kabbalistic methods. It is the basis for Kabbalistic magic, which, mixed with the following two branches of Kabbalistic study, the methods of practical Kabbalah are neither good nor bad, but can be used for what might be called positive or negative purposes. Therefore, it is necessary to first give you the work which will prepare you so that not only would you not have a desire to do magic for negative purposes, but so that you will understand the desired consequences that will result for you if you try to use magic for negative purposes. Thus, we will not be taking up the practical Kabbalah for a few more lessons. Please don't misinterpret the last paragraph to imply that you will be becoming a namby-pamby magician, who is all sweetness and light. If you follow the techniques as given in this course, no, by following the methods given here, you can become a powerful magician, afraid of no other entity, physical or otherwise. But rather than moving blindly with no understanding of the rules of the universe, as explained by the Kabbalah, by following these lessons and learning all the information, you become a true wise man or woman, a wizard, a warrior of light. When we do get into the practical Kabbalah, into gray magic, then we will truly soar. Nor will be limited to the Kabbalistic methods of magic. As an example, Just in dealing with talismans, we will be discussing pagan, numerological, and Rosicrucian and other systems of making these devices. 3. The literal Kabbalah. This concerns the relationship between the numbers and the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The ancient Hebrews didn't have separate figures to represent numbers, so they used the letters of their alphabet. It was believed that if two words had the same numerical total, they had a significant relationship to each other, and in some cases could be considered synonyms. As an example, avia equals 13, echad equals 13. Therefore, avia is the same as echad. Echad is the Hebrew word meaning one. Since in Judaism there is only one God, it also represents God. Yeva is Hebrew for love. Therefore, according to this system, God is love. Further, the holiest name of God, the Tetragrammaton, the YHVH, totals 26. Since 13 plus 13 equals 26, we can say that love, aviva, plus oneness, echad, equals the nature of God, YHVH. This process is known as gematria. As we go on in this lessons, you will see the vital importance of the gematria plays in ceremonial magic. It will be explained more fully in another lesson. By the way, did you remember that I said that I would explain the meaning of the number 13 earlier in this lesson? No Tyricon is another aspect of the literal Kabbalah. It is a system of finding acronyms where the first letters of a series of words gives a new word or words. English examples of this system would be Mothers Against Drunk Driving becoming a MADD, or North Atlantic Treaty Organization becomes NATO. As you can see, they did not have to form familiar words, although they may do so. Ata Gibor Li Olam Adonai is Hebrew for thou art great forever, my Lord. It is represented by the Notyricon, or acronym Agla, pronounced Agla, as given in the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. Amen in Hebrew is composed of three letters, Aleph, Mem, Nom, A-M-N. They are a Notyricon for El, pronounced El, and meaning God. Malak, meaning king. Ne'eman, meaning faithful. Thus, Amen, the Notarican for Al Melech Nehem Man, means God is our faithful king. This is the secret meaning of the word Amen. Tamora is a system of transposition of letters, such as is used in cryptography. Its primary importance is in interpretation of the Torah, known as exegesis, and making talismans. Here are some styles of this system. I've got a very simple kind of Tamora, wherein any letter is replaced by the letter which follows it in the alphabet. Thus, in English, A is written as B, B is written as C, etc. Aik Bigar, in this system, 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet plus 5 special final forms of 5 of the letters that are only used at the end of the words, are mixed according to a certain pattern. They are placed in 9 boxes of 3 letters, each thus formed a figure 3 boxes high, 3 boxes across. In Aik Bikar, you can have any letters in a box representing each of the other 2 letters in that box. In the first box, which has the letters Aleph, Yud, and Kof, the Yud could represent either the Kof or the Aleph, so too could the Kof represent the Aleph or the Yud, and the Aleph could represent either the Yud or the Kof. The letters in the second box makes the word Bikar. Akas Bekteya, the ch sounds like a Scottish word lock. This is similar to Aik Bikar. In this system, there are 7 boxes of 3 letters each, with 1 letter left over. Here again, a letter in one box is interchangeable with any of the other letters in that box. There are several other systems of Tamora, including the simple expedient of transferring the first letter of the alphabet with the last and the second with the second to last, etc. 4. The Unwritten Kabbalah. This fourth branch of the Kabbalah refers to the correspondences on the sacred glyph known as the Tree of Life. It is the key to the entire Kabbalistic system. In the next part of this lesson, we will begin the study of the Tree of Life. But before going on to the next part, take a few days off and go over the last history section. Also, be sure to be doing your rituals and keeping your diaries. You might also start building your altar and sewing your robe, if intended to do so, while you spend a few days studying what has been covered so far in this lesson. Part 4. In this part, we begin the study of the mystical symbol known as the Tree of Life. In the Garden of Eden, as described in the book of Genesis of the Old Testament, there were two important trees growing with the other flora and fauna. One was a tree of knowledge and good and evil. According to the exoteric interpretation of this passage, it was by eating of this tree that Adam and Eve fell from grace. God then drives Adam and Eve from the garden because of the Tree of Life is there. And as God says, "Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest ye put forth his hand and take also of the Tree of Life and eat and live forever." Although not having a good syntax, this biblical quote indicates clearly that the Tree of Life is considered to be highly important. Capable of bringing eternal life, it is also capable of bringing much more, as we shall see. Diagrams are frequently used to represent other things. A diagram of miniature solar system can be used to represent the appearance of an atom. Its many valence levels filled with electrons are represented by the orbiting planets, and the nucleus represented by the stationary sun. Yet no one has ever seen an atom. No one knows if this is actually the way an atom appears. In fact, modern subatomic nuclear physicists tend to ignore the solar system model of the atom, replacing it with many tiny waves of energy which constantly move toward and away from the center of the atom. But for most practical purposes, the solar system model of the atom works and is still taught in schools. However, it is only a model. There are other models for other purposes. One such model is a triangle with yin and yang at the lower angles and tau at the top. Yin represents all things which are archetypal, female, cold, wet, winter, respectively, emotionally, etc. Yang represents all things which are archetypally male, warm, dry, summer, aggressiveness, logic, etc. Tao represents the balance of these two ideas. Balance, according to the Taoism, is the desired state. For a person to be balanced, he or she must have aspects of both yin and yang. Other things can be reflected in this yin-yang Tao triangle. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit in Gnosticism was seen as being female. Liberalism, conservatism, middle of the road. Body, mind, spirit, and many other trinities. A most important one for modern philosophy was first written by the German philosopher Hegel and is known as the Hegelian dialectic, or the Thesis, Antithesis, Synthesis theory. This theory holds that if you have one condition or situation, thesis, but wish to change it to another, usually opposite condition or situation, antithesis, the result will not be either the new or old, but it will rather be a mixture, a synthesis of the opposing positions. This is why revolutions rarely achieve their goals. Instead, they end as a mixture of what was and what was desired. The method of nature is evolution, not revolution. The diagram, which is important to the Kabbalah above all other, is the Tree of Life as pictured on the next page. As you can see, it is composed of 10 circles forming 3 triangles. The highest one points up, the 2 triangles pointing down, and finally a single circle hanging pendant to the triangles at the bottom. Note that there are 22 paths numbered from 11 through 32 connecting the circles. These circles are known as Sephiroth, and the singular form being Sephirah. If you draw straight lines going from Sephirah 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc. up to 10, you will get the lightning bolt or flaming sword image shown below. This is both the flaming sword which the cherubim hold to keep people from getting back into the Garden of Eden, and the path by which divinity created the universe. How can we know the ultimate divinity? we only have mortal minds which are limited, and we see everything in dualities. Me, not up, down, stable, unstable, moving, stopped. Since the very nature of divinity by definition must be beyond any sort of limitations, divinity cannot have a dual nature. If divinity is male, then divinity is not female and thus is limited. Divinity is the ultimate unity beyond duality. And since we have mortal limited minds, the ultimate divinity cannot be like anything we know. In fact, the ultimate speculation we can make about the nature of divinity is nothing which we can know. In Hebrew, the word for nothing is ayin. As soon as we put in qualities upon divinity, we limit the source of all. As stated, a male God limits God to being not female. A merciful divinity does not have the righteous severity of being just. A divinity which is limited cannot be the ultimate divinity. It follows, therefore, that the only quality we can put up divinity is that divinity is without limit, and the Hebrew for without limit is Ein Sof. As stated earlier, it was believed that anyone who beheld the face of God could not live. On this planet, we can barely stand to look at the sun on a bright day for more than a fraction of a second. Since we cannot behold a bright light, nor can we behold the face of God, it follows that there is a relationship between the two, and that the first conceivable yet unknowable and unexperienceable aspect of divinity is brightness beyond any brightness of which we can conceive. Limitless light. The Hebrew for light without limit is Ein Sof. These three concepts are conceived to be above the tree of life with a veil beneath each, as shown in the following diagram. Because the word Ein means nothing, these three concepts above, the first Sephiroth, have been called the three veils of negative existence. However, they have been called so wrongly because in context, Ein does not mean nothing, but rather no thing, which our mortal minds can conceive, understand, or know. The earliest known Kabbalistic theory as to how the universe was formed comes from the Sepher Yetzirah. It holds that God moved the magical Hebrew letters in such a way that the physical universe was formed. This is a basis of great magic, which we'll get into later in the course. Today, the most popular Kabbalistic theory of the creation of the universe is the system described by the famous Rabbi Isaac Luria. According to Luria, before the creation, divinity filled the universe. Then, for some unknown reason, God decided to create. God allowed a tiny part of himself to shrink out of the universe, leaving a space. However, in some mysterious way, God still filled this space, much as a fragrant rose, when removed from a room, will still leave its essence or scent behind. This process Luria called Zimzuim. God then sent a beam of energy from within himself out into the newly abandoned space, apparently trying to create containers for this energy. But for some reason unknown to us, God appears to have failed, with the result that the containers were shattered, forming the shells of what is known as the Kolifot, the places where demons dwell. God attempted the process again, this time succeeding. The energy from the Ein went through the Ein Sof, through the Ein Sofor, and into the first Sephiroth. That Sephiroth filled the energy, then overflowed into Sephiroth number 2. Sephiroth 2 filled and overflowed into Sephiroth 3, so forth down to the tree of life until Sephiroth 10, where an equilibrium, a balance, was established. As the energy proceeds down the tree of life, it goes from being very ethereal and spiritual in nature until in the 10th Sephiroth it manifests as the physical plane and our planet. Earth, thus, this energy is seen as constantly creating our universe. This energy comes directly from divinity, and without it all would instantly cease to be. Thus, with this simple way of looking at the tree of life, we can see how truly God must love us to constantly be giving us existence. Here is a type of mathematical way of looking at existence as represented by the tree of life. From no thing comes limitless outer space. Filling this limitlessness is limitless light, Big Bang, or perhaps the space-time continuum. But this is all abstract. This is just energy. Now we need to develop solidity out of energy. We start with the idea of position. What is plane geometry is called the point first Sepher. By reflecting itself, the first point can create a second point, a second Sepher. By joining the 2 points together, we form a line where there is nothing but which to judge length. So again, by reflecting, we create a third point, a third Sepher, which enables us to say that that point is closer to point B and B is to point C. Thus, we have formed a triangle or plane. But this has all been what is called Euclidean. It exists in an imaginary two-dimensional surface with no thickness. To create a physical universe, we need substance, we need 3 dimensions, we need knowledge. The theoretical Sephiroth said to exist between the upper 3 and the lower 7 Sephiroth. In order to cross the void from 2 dimensions to 3, with the knowledge we create a fourth point, fourth Sephiroth, which with the previous 3 points gives us volume and thus a third dimension. But these 3-dimensional points are static, unmoving. We need another point to show motion, the 5th Sephiroth, and still another to indicate time, the 6th Sephiroth. For in the physical world, time and space intermingle and cannot exist without one another. So now we have something which has 3 dimensions. It can move within the 3 dimensions. We still have nothing which can appreciate that existence. We add 3 more points, the 7th, 8th, and 9th Sephiroth, which show A, the essence of life, called being, B, the ability to think, called consciousness, and C, the ability to experience the sensation of something outside of oneself, called bliss. Therefore, the first idea of reality can be appreciated by mind, is built up from the idea of point through the idea of bliss, and summed up as reality in point 10, the 10th Sephiroth. Now I realize that what has been described here is a complex and may in fact be confusing, but like the Terra, the only way to really learn about the Tree of Life is to study it, use it, confront it, and every day. As you learn more practical use for the Tree of Life, it will become quite easy to understand. In the meantime, spend a few days with this section before moving on to the next section. Remember, nobody said that these lessons would be easy, but by the end of the course, you will be able to understand the basic theories of the Tree of Life as represented in any book, and the Tree of Life will become part of the everyday life and thought. When that occurs, you will have become a true mystic, and when you understand the universe that is represented by the Tree of Life and can freely move about on the tree as you wish, then you will be a true magician. Part 5. Before proceeding with this section, you should really have the LBRP down pat. This means you should have all of your visualizations clear and the whole ritual memorized. The ritual I am about to describe is called the middle pillar ritual. Its proper practice will result in greater vitality, aid in the task of self-mastery, help cultivate pure spiritual insight, and help you in your white magical quest, the search for union with the divine nature. The Tree of Life exists elsewhere, not just as circles on a piece of paper or as a philosophical construct. It also exists within the human being as a variety of levels. Picture yourself turning around and backing into the Tree of Life. This will be giving you a good idea of how the Tree of Life exists on the body. The uppermost Sephiroth is just above the top of the head. The second Sephiroth is at the left side of the face, although it is on the right side of the Tree of Life. The third Sephiroth is on the left side of the Tree of Life and on the right side of the face. This continues down the entire body. We will be studying more of these relationships with the Tree of Life, part of the unwritten Kabbalah, in the next lesson. But for now, we must turn our focus away from the Kabbalah and towards India. Here in the most ancient of spiritual texts, the Tantras speak of psychic centers known as chakras, pronounced chakras, which exist in the energy field around our bodies. There is also an energy stream known as the Kundalini, which goes through these psychic centers. The oldest tantras speak of our 4 major chakras at the navel, the heart, the throat, and the top of the head. Later books speak of 6 and 7 chakras, after disagreeing as to where the other 2 or 3 are located, but most importantly, the book will tell you that it is dangerous to attempt to raise the Kundalini energy through the centers. To discover why this is, so we must jump from the ancient India to Victorian Europe. This was the era of Sigmund Freud. Although Freud outlived the Victorian era, much of his philosophy was heavily dependent upon his being raised in the Victorian period. It is also clear that Freud, a Jew, studied in the Kabbalah in at least some curious way. In the early writings of psychology, Freud indicated that he believed that there was an actual physical energy or psychosexual energy, which is called the libido. Freud believed that energy came from all parts of the body and would move to a single part of the body. He called this process cathexis. He believed that all psychological problems could be traced to blockages of this psychosexual libido energy. Freud realized that if he was correct, the way to solve psychological problems would be to unblock this sexual energy. This meant, of course, that he would have to encourage people to have sexual relations. Freud knew that in an age still rife with repressive Victorian morality, when tubes of cloth were placed over piano legs because they vaguely resembled women's legs, this would never be accepted. This was especially true since many of the people Freud worked with were unmarried. Freud was a pragmatist. He knew he would have to change his theory so that he could still help people. I don't know if Freud was thinking in this direction, but it does seem to make sense that if getting energy moving would clear blockages, clearing blockages would also allow the energy to move freely. No matter how he came to this conclusion, Freud did change his notion of libido from an actual energy to a mere desire which was capable of being focused in other directions. He called this process of focusing the energy in other directions sublimination. Unfortunately, since there was no longer an actual energy which was stopped, Freud now needed to come up with something contrary to the desire known as libido. This he called the death wish. If it sounds confusing, it is. This is because Freud would not accept the reality of libido as an actual energy. Meanwhile, one of Freud's most creative students, Wilhelm Reich, decided that Freud has been correct in the first place and set out to discover and measure Freud's concept of psychosexual energy. Freud was quoted as saying that Reich was either a fraud of the future of the psychoanalytic movement. Later, Freud wrote the book Civilization and its Discontents to denounce Reich's theories. Reich's researches went far beyond those of Freud. Reich called the psychosexual energy orgone and believed that he had seen it and measured it. Its color was a bright blue, such as in the LBRP. Reich invented group therapy, rebirthing primal scream, bioenergetics, and certain educational systems. He also did sexological studies, similar to Masters and Johnson's years before they began their research. Reich wrote several books on his theories and made devices, orgone accumulators, which he claimed could take orgone energy out of the environment to be used for healing purposes. For his efforts to enlighten the world, Reich was thrown in jail and his books were burned here in America in the 1950s. As a side note, while talking to Israel Regardie, I mentioned that Reich's book, The Functions of the Organism, should be read by all occultists, and Regardie strongly agreed. My point in this is to not get you to read a particular book or author, nor is it to criticize the actions of our government in the middle of the McCarthy era. Rather, it is to show that the Western science has studied and is well aware of the nature of psychosexual energy, and this energy called libido or orgone in the West is known as kundalini in India. The study of kundalini has gone on for thousands of years in India, so they have much better knowledge of it than does the Western science. In a base and chaotic form, it is said to lie sleeping in the area of the coccyx, the tip of the tailbone. On the surface of the body, this appears at the perineum, the space between the sexual organs and the anus. Through imaginations, spatial breathing and visualization methods, special sounds, or through sexual activity, this energy can be roused and set up the spine, charging the psychic centers, the chakras, as it rises. Here's where the danger lies. The energy does not rise smoothly. It stops and charges each chakra. If you're not ready to have a particular chakra charged with energy, if you have not reached the appropriate stage of psychic awareness, one of two things can happen. One, the chakra will be charged and the sudden influx of energy will blow you away, killing you, driving you insane, or perhaps enlightening you. Number two, the raised energy will have no place to go. Then you are like a filled balloon, which is in a state of tension and cannot pop nor have the air in it to be released. Something eventually has to give. Remember, Freud said originally that blockages were the cause of all psychological problems. If the kundalini becomes stuck at a lower chakra, it could result in a sexual obsession. Trying to raise the kundalini without proper instructions could also create severe physical problems. This is why, in order to practice what is called Kundalini Yoga, which is the new name. Its actual name is Laya Yoga. You should first get yourself a good teacher known as a guru. The ancient Kabbalists were also aware of this energy. It is sometimes known in Hebrew as Rayush. It too cycles in the psychic centers. In the Kabbalah, there are 5 important psychic centers, each relating to a Sepher and each also relating to a part of the psyche and the body of a human. The Yetzirah, also CH as in the Scottish word lock, is the psychic center just above the head. It is the deepest level of the subconscious. It is always in contact with the divine and is sometimes known as the higher self. It relates to the aspect of God represented by the god names Eheye. Rayush, besides being the name of the energy we have been discussing, is also the name of the psychic center at the solar plexus. This is in the center of the torso above the stomach, just below the heart and breasts. When this center is fully expanded, it includes the heart. It represents our consciousness. Here we discover one of the basic differences between Eastern and Western mystical philosophy. In the East, it is believed that our world is composed of nothing but vibrations. Our physical world is an illusion. This illusionary world is called Maya, and is what is perceived by our consciousness. Therefore, our consciousness, by only seeing Maya, slays the true inner reality. We are then to slay the slayer. Eliminate our consciousness via meditation and other techniques. Western occultism, being more pragmatic than its Eastern counterpart, says, let's not slay the slayer, but rather let us perfect the slayer so that it no longer only sees an illusion. This is the process of developing the will, which by your ritual practice you are now doing. The center relates to the god names Yud He Vav He, Elonai, Vad-At. The center, known as the Nefesh, is located at the sexual organs. It represents the most superficial layer of our subconscious. It holds our lusts and urges and is capable of blocking the flow of energy between the Yetzirah and Rayush. The god name here is Shade Elechai, which can compare these Kabbalistic ideas with other types of psychology. In the Kabbalah, we have the Yetzirah, Rayush, and Nefesh. In Freudism, you have the superego, the ego, and the id. And the transactional analysis, we have the adult, the parent, and the child. In the Kabbalistic system, there are 2 other psychic centers which need to be described. The psychic center located at the feet is known as the Goyuf. It represents the physical body. When standing, it actually goes above the feet and below the feet into the earth or surface below your feet. Its god name is Adonai Ha'aretz. The center at the base of the throat, as known in Hebrew, but is known as the link. When activated, this center becomes the self-induced and self-devised link between the higher self and the consciousness. The link is a good name, as it is a link between the centers above and below it. Its god name, borrowed from another Sepher, is Yud He Vav He Elohim. The energy we are going to work with is psychosexual in nature and can be fully controlled by the mind. More in this in a later lesson. Problems can develop when you try to raise the energy from the sexual centers because the emphasis on the sexual nature of energy. In our system, we stress the psychological and spiritual nature of the energy. Thus, we cannot work in complete safety and without a guru. In this system, we take the energy from our connection with the divine at the Yetzirah and bring it down the middle pillar, or your body. By the time the energy reaches the powerful sexual centers, it would have become so purified that, in effect, it spiritualizes the energies and that otherwise might only be expressed in sexual manner. This does not mean that you will lose any desire for sex, only that when you do have sexual relations, you will have a greater, even spiritual experience and not simply a physical experience. This ritual will make you neither more nor less interested in sex. The ritual of the middle pillar. Step 1. Do the relaxation ritual. Step 2. Do the LBRP. When finished, stand behind your altar, if you have one, with your hands at your side, eyes closed, steady, relaxed breath, and above all, try to get your mind into a still, quiet, and calm state. Focus on your attention just above the top of your head. As a result of the LBRP, there should be a sphere of light brilliance at this point. If not, visualize it. Take your time, regard this white brilliance with a sort of awe. It is the spatial equivalent to the vital core of your being, your higher self, your link with the divine. The result of this contemplation should be that the brilliance becomes even brighter. Now vibrate the god name Eheye 3 or 4 times. The sphere should get brighter still. Step 4. Now visualize a slender beam of light descending from the brilliance through the center of your head and stopping at the nape of your neck. Here the beam widens into a ball of light, although not as big as the one above. At this point, you should be visualizing simultaneously the brilliant sphere above your head, the small ball of light at the base of your neck, and the beam of light connecting the two. Understand that this is the link between your conscious and your higher self, and the ball of light at your neck should grow in size and intensity. Vibrate the God name Yud He Vav He Elohim 3 or 4 times. Step 5. Keeping the above in mind, cause a beam of light to descend from the ball of light at your neck, go down your torso, and light up the solar plexus in the form of a sphere. Understand that this represents your consciousness, and the ball should increase in brightness and intensity. You may feel as if you are being warmed by an internal sun. Vibrate the God name Yud He Vav He Elo Avda'at 3 or 4 times. Step 6. In the same manner, see the light descend to the area of the genitals and form a sphere. Here, regard yourself as a master of your lower self. The God name to be vibrated 3 or 4 times is Shaddai El Shai Kai. A pronunciation of the last CHAI being in the guttural loch sound. Step 7. Again, the light should descend here to form a sphere which encompasses both feet and the ground. That is, the sphere should be half above the ground covering the feet and half below the ground under the feet. The God name to be vibrated 3 or 4 times is Adonai Haaretz. Step 8. At this point, there should be large spheres of light above the head, at the throat, at the solar plexus, at the groin, and at the feet. Each sphere of light should be connected with the sphere above and below by a beam of light. Step 9. Stay in this state for as long as you desire. Then take a deep breath, and as you exhale, visualize the images fading and becoming invisible. They are still there, but they cannot now be seen. This completes the middle pillar ritual. Step 10. Remember the instructions on vibrating the words. Each vibrated word should be done so that you can feel the appropriate area of the body vibrating. Step 11. If at any point you should have trouble or difficulty in forming a sphere of light or a beam of light, do not struggle for minutes on end until you break out in a sweat. Rather, stop where you are and complete step 9 with the process you have made. Several things could have caused the problem. They are usually mental in nature, either from conscious or unconscious resources. By repeating this ritual daily, you will be able to eventually overcome any problem in a very natural, gentle manner. You will be a better, stronger, happier person for it. Step 12. Do the Terra Contemplation Ritual. If you have been doing the ritual regularly, or at least 6 weeks, you should begin using the all 22 cards of the major arcana. Step 13. Record results, feelings, experiences, etc. in your ritual diary. Note, it is after about 2 or 3 months of regular work that students start to report some unusual phenomenon. They may think that they are seeing, hearing, or even feeling strange things. This is perfectly normal. You have been working with what I call the astral senses. The astral senses include the ability to see, hear, etc. on the higher planes. The planes will be discussed in later lessons. Anything that you experience has always been there. Only know for the first time you have opened your senses enough so that you can become aware of it. I first became aware of these things while watching a boring program on television. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a large serpent seemed to come out of the floor and descend back into the floor about a foot away from its point of entry. A friend of mine called these things astral garbage. I call them little nasties. They cannot harm you in any way. Let me repeat that. Little nasties cannot harm you. It can be bothersome, however. Sometimes I'll think that somebody is looking over my shoulder and I'll spin around to see who it is, only to find empty air. One time while talking to a person at a party, I thought I saw an old friend walk by. I turned away suddenly from the person I was talking to in order to say hello to a bush. When I turned back to the person I was talking with, she gave me a strange look and quickly made an excuse to leave. Oh well. I did say that they could be bothersome. Other people have told me of seeing friends who weren't there, as I did, and others have heard voices calling them. Some people see bright, sparkly spots floating through the air. You may never see them and still become a very successful magician. If you have seen them, or do see them in the future, don't worry. It's not a psychic attack, and you are not going crazy, and they can't hurt you. In fact, if you have the right attitude about little nasties, they can be sort of fun, especially at a boring party. In any event, don't be surprised when those little guys bring a little silliness, fun, and at times exasperation into your life. In all honesty, I am not really sure what they are. In some cases, they seem to be what are called elementals, more on them in later lesson. In other cases, because you are working via visualization in the astral plane, you may, like a weird cosmic magnet, just be attracting meaningless astral junk. Little nasties are not evil entities. Many children have invisible playmates, and I believe that in many instances, these are the little nasties. You will find a summary of the middle pillar on the next page. Review. The following questions are designed to help you to determine if you have mastered the information in Lesson 2. Please try to answer them without looking at the text. Answers are in Appendix 2. 1. Name the 4 parts of the LBRP. 2. What is Agla an abbreviation for? 3. Who is the Archangel of the North? 4. What is the Great Voice? 5. How do you make the sign of elemental water? 6. What are the 3 literatures of ancient Hebrews? 7. Name the man who made Hebrew into a modern living language. 8. How was the Hebrew letter Vav probably originally pronounced? 9. What was the earliest form of Hebrew mysticism? 10. Who started the French occult revival? 11. What are the 4 main branches of the Kabbalah? 12. How do you say without limit in Hebrew? 13. What are the little nasties? The following questions only you can answer. 1. Are you doing all of the rituals, relaxation, LBRP, and middle pillar regularly? 2. Do you understand Kabbalistic psychology? 3. Do you have a beginning understanding of the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life? 4. Do you understand the idea of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis?